My daughter called me a toxic old hag as the judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison. She was sobbing, mascara streaming down her face, begging for mercy. The same face that had smiled sweetly at me every Sunday dinner while she ruthlessly stole $137,000 from my accounts. I felt nothing but ice-cold satisfaction coursing through my veins. "Your Honor," I said, standing up in that packed courtroom with steel in my voice, "my daughter thought I was just another confused old woman she could rob blind and discard like garbage. She was dead wrong." 6 months earlier, I was Maya Jones, sweet 68-year-old grandmother, retired nurse, the woman everyone pitied as losing her mind. My own flesh and blood convinced half the neighborhood that poor Maya desperately needed help with her finances because she was getting confused and senile. The truth? I caught her red-handed, and I was about to destroy her life just like she tried to destroy mine. It started with a bank statement I found hidden in my kitchen drawer like a dirty secret, an account I'd never opened, a $15,000 withdrawal I'd never authorized, my daughter's signature forged so perfectly it looked like mine. But I knew every curve of my own handwriting after 68 years of living. But here's what Vanessa didn't know about her confused old mother. I spent 42 years as a registered nurse managing million-dollar hospital budgets while she was still wetting the bed. I caught doctors falsifying records and exposed medication theft rings that would make your head spin. I had a master's degree in healthcare administration when she was still learning to tie her shoes. Sweet little Maya who baked cookies and knitted scarves? That was just my cover. I sat at my kitchen table that Tuesday morning, surrounded by evidence she thought she'd cleverly hidden from her senile mother. Credit cards opened in my name like I was some kind of identity to be harvested. Forged loan documents that would make a career criminal jealous. A reverse mortgage on my house that I never signed. My house that I'd worked my fingers to the bone to pay off. For 3 years, my own daughter had been treating me like her personal bank account, bleeding me dry while looking me in the eye and calling me mama. She'd made one fatal, devastating mistake. She underestimated me. That mistake was about to cost her everything, her freedom, her reputation, her future, and I was going to enjoy every single moment of her downfall. Let me take you back to that Tuesday morning when my entire world exploded into a million pieces. I was looking for my insurance papers when I found them, bank statements shoved behind my recipe box like hidden contraband. Maya Jones, checking account at Third National Bank. Balance, $847. My hands trembled with rage. I'd never set foot in Third National Bank in my entire life. As I spread those damning statements across my kitchen table, my heart hammered against my ribs like a caged animal. 42 years of nursing had trained me not to panic in a crisis. But this was my own daughter, systematically destroying me from the inside. Deposit, $3,200 from Maya Jones Savings. Withdrawal, $3,200 cash. Deposit, $5,500 from Maya Jones Retirement Fund. Withdrawal, $5,500 cash. Someone was methodically draining my life's work, every penny I'd scraped together through decades of double shifts, missed holidays, and backbreaking labor. Someone who had intimate access to my financial information, someone who could forge my signature well enough to fool trained bank professionals. I made coffee with shaking hands and started calculating the devastation. In just 3 months, $23,400 had been surgically removed from my legitimate accounts, transferred to this shadow account, then withdrawn as cash that had vanished into thin air while I trusted like a fool. My fingers dialed my real bank with the fury of a woman betrayed. This is Maya Jones. I need to speak to someone about unauthorized access to my accounts. Now. Mrs. Jones, I see here that your daughter Vanessa has power of attorney. Any transactions would have been authorized by her. My blood turned to ice in my veins. What power of attorney? The one filed 6 months ago. Let me transfer you to our fraud department immediately. Power of attorney, those harmless insurance forms Vanessa had brought over one evening, telling me they were just paperwork, Mama, while I was distracted by a phone call. I'd signed them without reading because I trusted my own daughter with my life. I'd been played like a violin by my own flesh and blood. But she was about to learn that Maya Jones doesn't stay played for long. Not when someone messes with everything I'd worked my entire life to build. Mama, you're being paranoid again. Vanessa's voice dripped with that patronizing tone she'd perfected, the one that made me feel like a confused child instead of the woman who'd raised her single-handedly after her father died. She was lounging in my living room like she owned the place, the same spot where she used to curl up as a frightened little girl when thunderstorms scared her. Now, she was the storm, and I was about to unleash hell. I slid those damning bank statements across the coffee table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Explain these, every single one. For just a heartbeat, I saw the real Vanessa, the same guilty expression from when she was 7 and I caught her stealing cookies. The same wide-eyed panic from when she was 16 and took money from my purse. But this time, she'd stolen my future, not my loose change. I don't know what you're talking about, Mama. You asked me to help with your finances, remember? You said you were getting confused about all the paperwork. The lies rolled off her tongue like honey, smooth and sickening. Vanessa, I have a master's degree in healthcare administration. I managed the financial operations for a 300-bed hospital for 15 years while you were learning basic math. I think I can handle my own checking account. She leaned back with the arrogance of someone who thought she held all the cards. That was a long time ago, Mama. Things change. People change. You're not as sharp as you used to be. I pulled out my phone and let her see the recording app blinking red. I've been recording our conversations for the past month. Would you like to hear what you told the bank manager about my supposed mental decline last Tuesday? Every drop of color drained from her face like I'd slapped her. You can't record me without my permission. Actually, sweetheart, in this state, I can. Single-party consent. Amazing what you can learn when you're not losing your mind. Vanessa shot to her feet, her mask of concern finally slipping away to reveal the cold manipulator underneath. You're being ridiculous. I'm trying to help you, and you're treating me like some kind of criminal. I stood up slowly, feeling every inch of my 68 years transformed into pure steel. Because you are a criminal. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. My daughter, my only child, the baby I'd nursed through fevers and nightmares, the girl I'd sacrificed everything for, was a thief who'd been slowly murdering my financial future. Get out of my house, Vanessa, and don't you dare come back until you're ready to tell me the truth about every stolen penny. She grabbed her purse like it was on fire and stormed toward the door. You'll regret this, Mama. When you're rotting in some nursing home wondering why nobody visits, remember this moment. Remember how you chose money over your own daughter. I watched her car screech out of my driveway and felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Pure, crystalline rage that burned like rocket fuel in my veins. She wanted to play games with Maya Jones? Game on. After Vanessa fled like the coward she was, I did what any seasoned nurse would do. I methodically assessed the carnage and planned my counterattack. By midnight, I had a crystal clear picture of her betrayal. She'd stolen $137,000 over 3 years. Using that power of attorney, she'd tricked me into signing like a master con artist. But here's what my thieving daughter didn't know. I'd been keeping meticulous records of my own, every transaction documented, every conversation remembered, every document preserved. It's a habit you develop when you're responsible for keeping people alive. One mistake and someone dies. I called my old friend Martha at 6 a.m., my voice steady as a surgeon's scalpel. Martha Jenkins had been my supervisor at the hospital, and she'd retired to become a private investigator who specialized in catching liars and cheats. "Maya, what's got you up before dawn?" "I need help, Martha. The kind that ends with handcuffs and orange jumpsuits." When Martha arrived, she took one look at my organized stacks of evidence and let out a low whistle of admiration. "Dear God, Maya, you've got enough documentation here to put her away for decades." "That's exactly what I'm planning to do." Martha was already reaching for her phone. "I'm calling Jessica Chen. She's a lawyer who destroys people who abuse the elderly for sport. She's going to absolutely love annihilating your daughter." "Why will she love it?" "Because you've done half her job for her. Most victims of financial elder abuse are too scared, too ashamed, or too broken to fight back. They don't have evidence like this. Most victims aren't registered nurses who've spent 4 decades managing hospital finances and catching people who think they're smarter than they are." "Exactly. Vanessa picked the wrong target, and she's about to learn that lesson the hard way." Jessica Chen arrived 2 hours later with a briefcase full of legal weapons and a predatory smile that promised justice. She spread my documents across the dining room table like a general planning a battlefield strategy. "This is one of the most systematic cases of financial elder abuse I've ever seen," she said, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Your daughter didn't just steal from you. She'd built an entire criminal empire using your identity. Can we destroy her completely? We can make her pay back every stolen penny with interest, plus punitive damages that will cripple her financially. And we can make sure she never victimizes another elderly person again. What's the first step in this beautiful destruction? We gather more evidence. We document every crime. We build a case so ironclad that even the most expensive defense lawyer couldn't save her from prison." I smiled for the first time in days, feeling like a predator who'd finally found her prey. "When do we start hunting?" "We already have." Jessica's first tactical move was hiring Dr. Patricia Williams, a forensic accountant who'd spent 20 years destroying financial criminals for the IRS. She arrived at my house with a laptop and the cold precision of someone who lived to catch thieves. "Mrs. Jones, I've reviewed your preliminary evidence. We need to trace every stolen dollar, every forged signature, every fraudulent account opening until we have a complete picture of her crimes. I have copies of everything going back 5 years, bank statements from every institution, credit reports from all 3 agencies, photographs of every document I've ever signed. It's all organized by date and cross-referenced." Dr. Williams stared at me like I'd just performed a miracle. Most people don't keep records with this level of detail. Most people didn't spend 40 years making sure medication dosages were exact to the milligram. 1 decimal point error and someone dies. I don't make mistakes, and I don't let other people make mistakes with my life. While Dr. Williams methodically built our case, Martha was conducting her own investigation into Vanessa's secret life. She'd been tracking my daughter's movements, her spending patterns, and her criminal associates like a bloodhound on the scent. "Maya, prepare yourself for this," Martha said, spreading photos across my kitchen table. "Your daughter has been living like a millionaire while bleeding you dry. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, expensive jewelry, a brand new car every year. She's been funding a lifestyle of greed with your retirement money." "And her boyfriend Marcus?" "Marcus Peterson has a criminal record longer than my arm, 2 previous convictions for financial fraud, 1 for identity theft. He's a professional con artist who targets elderly people for a living." My heart clenched with the bitter realization they planned this. They specifically targeted me because they thought I'd be an easy mark. That's exactly what happened, but there's more devastating news. I found 3 other families in the county who've reported similar systematic fraud, all elderly victims, all with substantial assets, all destroyed by family members or caregivers. Jessica joined our war council with fire in her eyes. If we can prove this is part of a larger criminal conspiracy, we can get the state attorney general involved. This could become a major prosecution that sends a message to every criminal who thinks elderly people are easy targets. "What do you need from me to make this happen?" "I need you to be brave enough to wear a wire and get her to confess her crimes on tape. Can you do that?" "Can I get my daughter to incriminate herself while recording every word? It would be my absolute pleasure." Martha pulled out specialized recording equipment. "Maya, are you prepared to look your daughter in the eye and get her to admit she's been systematically destroying your life?" I thought about every stolen dollar, every forged signature, every lie she'd told while I trusted her with everything I had. "Martha, I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. Let's destroy her." 2 days later, I was sitting in my living room transformed into a hunter. A tiny microphone was taped to my chest like armor, and a recording device in my purse was ready to capture every damning word. Martha was parked across the street, monitoring my heartbeat and ready to storm in if things went wrong. Jessica was on standby with legal backup and the cold promise of justice. I'd called Vanessa that morning, my voice perfectly pitched with confused vulnerability. I told her I was so confused about some financial matters and desperately needed her help. She'd agreed to come over immediately, probably thinking she could manipulate me back into submission. When she arrived carrying flowers like some kind of peace offering, she was wearing her most innocent expression, the same fake smile she'd perfected as a child when she was lying through her teeth. "Hi, Mama. I brought you those daisies you love." "Thank you, sweetheart. Come sit down. I'm so glad you're here." She settled into her usual spot on the couch, probably thinking she'd won. "You sounded so upset on the phone. What's going on?" "I've been going through some old papers, and I found some accounts I don't remember opening. I'm so confused, and I thought maybe you could help me understand what's happening to me." Vanessa's face went carefully blank, the expression of a predator sensing a trap. "What kind of accounts?" "Credit cards mostly, and there's apparently a loan I took out against the house. I don't remember signing those papers, sweetheart. Am I losing my mind?" "Mama, you've been forgetting a lot of things lately. Remember how you asked me to help with your finances because the paperwork was getting too complicated? Did I really sign papers for a loan against my house? You were having trouble understanding the legal language. I helped guide you through the process because I love you. So I did sign it? Well, you authorized me to handle your financial affairs. That's what power of attorney means, Mama. You gave me permission to take care of you." There it was, the first admission. She'd used that power of attorney to forge my signature on documents I never agreed to, never saw, never understood. And those credit cards with my name on them, those were for emergencies. You said you wanted to make sure you had access to funds if you needed them urgently. How much have I spent on those cards, sweetheart? Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, sensing danger but unable to see the trap closing around her. I don't remember exactly. A few $1,000s here and there for things you needed. The statements show $45,000 in charges. That doesn't seem like a few thousand, does it? You're confused about the numbers, Mama. The bills aren't that high. Should I call the credit card company and ask them to explain the charges to me? No! The word exploded out of her with panic. I mean, no, that's not necessary. I can handle sorting through the confusion. Handle what exactly, Vanessa? The situation. Your confusion about the finances. Everything. I leaned forward, feeling like a lioness about to pounce. Vanessa, sweetheart, are you stealing money from me? How can you even ask me something like that? I'm your daughter. I'm trying to help you, and you're attacking me like I'm some kind of criminal. Then explain to me where my money went. I used it for your care, for things you needed. I've been taking care of you. What specific things did you buy for me with $45,000? I don't remember every single purchase, Mama, but it was all for your benefit. I was under so much stress trying to manage everything for you. I stood up and walked to the window, feeling the power shifting in my favor. Vanessa, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I know exactly what you've stolen, when you stole it, and how you did it. I have documentation of every single fraudulent transaction. The silence behind me was absolutely deafening. You're going to pay back every penny you stole from me, plus interest, plus damages for trying to destroy my life? Mama, I can't possibly... Yes, you can. And you will, because the alternative is spending the next decade in prison. Jessica drafted a letter that landed on Vanessa like a legal nuclear bomb. The terms were crystal clear and absolutely non-negotiable. Full restitution of $137,000, plus interest and legal fees within 30 days, or face criminal prosecution that would destroy her life completely. I expected her to call immediately, begging for mercy. Instead, she showed up at my door the next day with Marcus and a lawyer, a pathetic attempt at intimidation that only fueled my righteous anger. Mrs. Jones, I'm Todd Brennan, representing your daughter. We'd like to discuss a reasonable settlement that benefits everyone involved. I let them into my living room, but remained standing like a queen holding court. What kind of settlement? We're prepared to offer you $25,000 to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding quietly and preserve family relationships. I looked at him like he'd just insulted my intelligence. $25,000? She stole $137,000 from me while I trusted her with my life. That's allegedly stole, Mrs. Jones. We strongly dispute that figure and the characterization of the transactions. Do you dispute the recorded conversation where she explicitly admitted to unauthorized use of my power of attorney to forge legal documents? The lawyer's arrogant confidence wavered like a house of cards in a hurricane. We're prepared to increase our settlement offer to $50,000 as a gesture of goodwill. Here's my counteroffer, and it's the only one you'll get. $137,000 plus interest, plus my legal fees, plus damages for emotional distress, and the systematic destruction of my financial security. Total amount, $180,000. That's completely unreasonable and excessive. What's unreasonable is a daughter stealing her mother's entire retirement while looking her in the eye and calling her confused. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice dripping with the arrogance of a career criminal. Look, old lady, nobody's going to believe your word over Vanessa's. You're just a confused old woman who doesn't understand modern finances." I looked at him with the cold precision of a nurse who'd seen every type of human garbage imaginable. "Mr. Peterson, isn't it? Marcus Peterson of 425 Elm Street? The same Marcus Peterson who was convicted of check fraud in 2019 and identity theft in 2021? His face went white as a hospital sheet. "Yes, I had you both investigated by professionals. I know about every elderly person you've targeted and destroyed. I know about your systematic pattern of financial abuse across 3 states. And I know that the FBI is very, very interested in having long conversations with both of you." Vanessa found her voice, but it came out as a desperate whine. "Mama, please, I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "You stopped being my daughter the moment you decided to steal my future and leave me to rot. You're a criminal who happens to share my DNA. There's a difference." The lawyer stood up, clearly recognizing a losing battle. "We'll need time to consider your proposal. You have exactly 48 hours. After that, I file criminal charges and let the attorneys general of 3 states decide your fate. And trust me, they won't be as generous as I'm being right now." After they scurried away like the cowards they were, I poured myself a glass of wine and called Martha, with pure satisfaction in my voice. "How did it go?" "I think they're finally beginning to understand they picked the wrong woman to mess with." "Good, because Jessica got another call from the FBI today. They're extremely interested in Marcus's activities across state lines." "What does that mean for my darling daughter?" "It means Marcus is looking at federal charges that could put him away for decades. And if she was part of a larger criminal conspiracy, she could be facing serious prison time that will destroy her entire future." I took a sip of wine and smiled. Maybe she'll finally learn that actions have consequences. The next morning, I woke up to find my front yard vandalized like a war zone and my car keyed with deep, angry scratches. A threatening note on my windshield read, "Drop the charges or this gets much worse, old woman." Instead of feeling intimidated, I felt energized, like a warrior who'd finally found a worthy battle. They'd just made their biggest and most devastating mistake yet. I called the police and filed a report with cold satisfaction. Then I called Jessica with steel in my voice. "They just escalated this to a felony," she said, her voice practically purring with anticipation. "Intimidation of a witness is a serious crime that's going to destroy them in court." "Perfect! I'm tired of being treated like a victim. It's time to show them what happens when you mess with Maya Jones." "Maya, I think it's time we filed every single charge we can think of. Financial fraud, identity theft, intimidation of a witness, conspiracy to commit elder abuse. We're going to hit them with everything we have." "Do it! Destroy them completely." 2 hours later, I was sitting in the district attorney's office with Jessica and prosecutor David Martinez. He was younger than I expected, but he had the same focused intensity I'd seen in the best doctors, the kind who never gave up on saving a life. "Mrs. Jones, this is one of the most comprehensive and well-documented cases of financial elder abuse I've ever prosecuted. Your evidence is absolutely extraordinary." "Thank you. We're going to prosecute this to the fullest extent of the law and make an example that sends a message to every criminal who thinks elderly people are easy targets. But I need to warn you, this is going to be brutal. Your daughter is going to try to portray you as confused, maybe even incompetent. She's going to attack your character and make this deeply personal." "She already has. Are you prepared for the emotional warfare that's coming?" I thought about my 42 years as a nurse, the arrogant doctors who'd tried to bully me into silence, the corrupt administrators who'd attempted to intimidate me when I exposed their crimes. The countless times I'd had to stand up for my patients against people who thought they could take advantage of the vulnerable. Mr. Martinez, I've been fighting for justice my entire life. Now I'm fighting for myself and every elderly person who's been victimized by their own families. I'm not backing down. I'm not giving up. And I'm definitely not going quietly. He smiled with the confidence of someone who recognized a fellow warrior. Excellent, because we're going to win this case and send your daughter to prison where she belongs. That afternoon, warrants were issued that would change everything. The charges were extensive and devastating: financial fraud, identity theft, forgery, intimidation of a witness, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Martha called me at 6 p.m. with pure satisfaction in her voice. They just arrested Vanessa at her job in front of all her coworkers. Marcus was picked up at his apartment. Both are being held on $100,000 bail and looking at serious prison time. I felt a complex mix of emotions washing over me: relief that justice was finally coming, vindication that my fight had been worth it, and yes, a little sadness that it had come to this. What happens now? Now we prepare for trial and show the world what happens when criminals target Maya Jones. And Maya? Yes? You should be incredibly proud of yourself. You just showed every criminal in the city that elderly people aren't helpless victims waiting to be exploited. This is just the beginning. I'm going to make sure no other family goes through what I've endured. The story exploded across local news like wildfire. Retired nurse fights back against daughter's financial abuse. When reporter Sarah Chen interviewed me in my living room, I looked directly into that camera and spoke with the voice of every elderly person who'd ever been victimized. Mrs. Jones, what would you say to other elderly people who might be experiencing financial abuse? I'd say that being old doesn't mean being helpless. It doesn't mean being silent. And it absolutely doesn't mean accepting abuse from anyone, even your own children. We have power, we have rights, and we have the wisdom that comes from surviving decades of challenges. Some people might say that prosecuting your own daughter is extreme. Some people might say that stealing $137,000 from your mother while manipulating her into thinking she's losing her mind is extreme. I disagree with their priorities. What do you hope to accomplish with this case? I want my money back, every penny. I want justice that sends a message, and I want other elderly people to know they don't have to be victims. They can fight back. They can win. The story went viral locally, and my phone started ringing constantly with calls from other elderly people who'd been suffering in silence. Their stories broke my heart and fueled my determination. Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, 73, whose son had been stealing her Social Security checks for 2 years while telling her she was too confused to manage money. Mr. James Thompson, 81, whose trusted caregiver had been forging his signature on checks and draining his savings. Mrs. Anna Kowalski, 69, whose nephew had manipulated her into signing over her house and then tried to evict her. By the end of the week, I had 17 heartbreaking stories, 17 people who'd been victimized and felt they had no power, no voice, no hope. I called Jessica with fire in my voice. I want to do something about this epidemic. What do you mean? All these people who've called me, they need help. They need someone to fight for them the way you're fighting for me. Maya, that's not your responsibility. Maybe not legally, but it's absolutely my choice morally. I'm a 68-year-old woman with no children worth claiming and more money coming my way than I need for the rest of my life. What else am I going to do with it? You could travel the world, enjoy your retirement, live peacefully. I could. Or I could make sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to other innocent people. I could turn my pain into power and my experience into a weapon against financial abuse. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Maya, what you're talking about is essentially starting a legal aid organization dedicated to fighting elder abuse. Is that what I'm talking about? Yes, and it's a brilliant, powerful idea that could change thousands of lives. Then let's make it happen. Let's turn this tragedy into something beautiful. While preparing for trial, I was also building something revolutionary, a network of people dedicated to fighting elder financial abuse with the passion of warriors defending their families. Mrs. Helen Rodriguez became my first lieutenant. Mrs. Jones, what you're doing gives me hope for the first time in years. Maybe I can fight back too instead of accepting this abuse. Within 2 weeks, we had methodically documented that Helen's son had stolen over $20,000 from her Social Security payments. He was arrested, prosecuted, and sentenced to prison while Helen recovered every stolen penny. Mrs. Jones, if you hadn't inspired me to stand up for myself and demand justice, I would never have gotten my money back or my dignity, Helen told me with tears of gratitude. Mr. James Thompson, 81, was next. His caregiver had been forging his signature on checks for months, thinking he was too old and isolated to notice. We caught her red-handed and recovered $15,000 while sending her to prison. Mrs. Anna Kowalski's case was even more satisfying. Her nephew had convinced her to sign over her house through emotional manipulation, then tried to evict her from her own home. We got her property back and watched her nephew face fraud charges that would haunt him for years. Each victory energized me and proved that elderly people didn't have to be silent victims. We could organize, we could fight, we could win. Jessica was amazed at what we were accomplishing. Maya, you're essentially running an informal legal aid organization out of your kitchen, and it's more effective than some official programs. Then maybe I should make it official and expand it. What do you mean? I mean, maybe I should start a foundation with a real office, professional staff, and the resources to help hundreds of people instead of just a few. Use whatever settlement money I get to fund a revolution. You realize that what you're proposing would be a major undertaking that could consume the rest of your life? I've got time, I've got motivation, and I'm about to have substantial money. More importantly, I've got righteous anger and the determination to make sure no other elderly person suffers what I've endured. What else would you need? A brilliant lawyer, I said with a smile. Lucky for me, I already have one. The preliminary hearing was held on a cold Thursday morning in November. I dressed in my best Navy suit-like armor and arrived at the courthouse with Jessica, Martha, and several of the elderly people whose lives we'd already transformed. The media was there in force, along with supporters who'd driven from across the state. Vanessa was sitting at the defendant's table with her lawyer, Todd Brennan. She looked thin and exhausted, older than her 42 years. Marcus was at a separate table with his own attorney, both of them looking like cornered animals. Judge Patricia Hartley called the court to order with the gravity of someone who understood the historic nature of this case. This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of the state versus Vanessa Washington and Marcus Peterson. Prosecutor Martinez laid out our case with the precision of a master surgeon. The forged signatures, the unauthorized loans, the credit cards opened in my name, the systematic pattern of deception and manipulation that had nearly destroyed my financial future. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand with my head held high and my voice steady as steel. Mrs. Jones, please tell the court about your professional background. I'm a registered nurse with 42 years of experience managing life and death situations. I have a bachelor's degree in nursing and a master's degree in healthcare administration. I managed the financial operations for a 300-bed hospital for 15 years, overseeing budgets in the millions. Would you describe yourself as financially sophisticated? Absolutely. I've been managing complex financial situations since before my daughter learned to balance a checkbook. Did you ask your daughter to manage your finances? Never. I was managing my own finances perfectly well. Did you authorize her to open credit cards in your name? Absolutely not. Did you authorize her to take out a loan against your house? Never. I would never risk the home I worked my entire life to own. Brennan's cross-examination was pathetically predictable. He tried to suggest that I had been confused about what I was signing, that I had memory problems, that I was vindictively prosecuting my daughter out of spite. Mrs. Jones, isn't it true that you've been having memory problems? No, it is not true. My memory is perfect, which is why I remember every lie my daughter told me. Haven't you been confused about financial matters? Mr. Brennan, I've been managing complex financial operations since before you were born. The only thing I'm confused about is how you think this line of questioning helps your client. Isn't it possible that you simply don't remember authorizing these transactions? Mr. Brennan, I remember every detail of every conversation I've had with your client about my finances. I have recordings of many of those conversations. Would you like to hear them in open court? He quickly declined. Judge Hartley didn't take long to decide. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, the court finds probable cause to believe that both defendants committed every crime charged. This case will proceed to trial, and I recommend that the defendants seriously consider plea negotiations. Outside the courthouse, I was surrounded by reporters and supporters. I made a statement that would be quoted for years. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about accountability. It's about sending an unmistakable message that elderly people are not easy targets. We are experienced, we are organized, and we are fighting back. 2 weeks before the trial was scheduled to begin, Todd Brennan called Jessica with what he probably thought was a generous settlement offer. They're offering full restitution plus $50,000 in damages, Jessica told me over the phone, her voice carrying a hint of disbelief at their desperation. In exchange for what? Dropping the criminal charges, Vanessa would plead guilty to a misdemeanor, get probation, and walk away with barely a slap on the wrist. And Marcus? Same pathetic deal. I felt my blood boil with righteous indignation. What do you think? I think it's a substantial offer that would guarantee you get your money back without the emotional toll of a trial. But if we crush them in trial? If we win, and we will, they could go to prison for 5 to 10 years each, and you'd be entitled to massive punitive damages on top of the restitution. I thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, who was still terrified to prosecute her thieving son. I thought about Mr. Thompson, who'd almost given up on getting justice. I thought about every elderly person who'd called me with their heartbreaking stories of betrayal. Jessica, if I take this settlement, what message does that send to every criminal who targets elderly people? That you're practical, that you got your money back, and if we go to trial and destroy them completely, that Maya Jones doesn't negotiate with thieves, that there are devastating consequences for elder abuse, that elderly people have power and aren't afraid to use it. Then we go to trial. We're We're going to make an example of them that will terrify every potential elder abuser in this country. Maya, are you absolutely certain this is guaranteed money versus the risk of trial? I'm not just fighting for money anymore. I'm fighting for every elderly person who's been told they're too old, too confused, too weak to stand up for themselves. We're going to trial, and we're going to obliterate them. The trial began on a bitter, cold Monday morning in December. The courthouse was packed beyond capacity with media, elderly spectators who'd traveled from across the country, and victims of financial abuse who'd come to witness history being made. I wore my best black suit like battle armor and carried the leather briefcase that had belonged to my late husband, a man who would have been proud to see me fighting for justice. Prosecutor Martinez delivered his opening statement with the fury of a righteous crusader. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about the most fundamental betrayal imaginable. A daughter who looked her mother in the eye every Sunday and systematically destroyed her financial future while calling her confused. He outlined our evidence with devastating precision. The forged signatures that could have fooled handwriting experts, the unauthorized accounts that funded a criminal lifestyle, the pattern of psychological manipulation designed to make me question my own sanity. The defense will try to tell you that Maya Jones is a confused old woman who doesn't understand what happened to her, but the evidence will prove that she is a brilliant, sharp woman who caught her daughter red-handed and refused to be silenced. Brennan's opening statement was an insult to everyone's intelligence. Maya Jones loved her daughter so much that she asked for help with her finances. What she's calling theft was actually authorized assistance from a caring daughter. It was pathetic, predictable, and destined to fail. The prosecution's case was a masterpiece of legal destruction. Dr. Williams walked the jury through every fraudulent transaction with the precision of a financial forensic expert. Martha testified about her investigation, revealing the systematic pattern of targeting elderly victims. Jessica presented the recorded conversations where Vanessa admitted to unauthorized use of my power of attorney. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand with the confidence of someone who'd spent decades saving lives and fighting for justice. Mrs. Jones, please tell the jury about your educational background and professional experience. I described my nursing degree, my master's in healthcare administration, my 42 years of managing life and death situations and complex financial operations. Have you ever been diagnosed with dementia or any cognitive impairment? Never. My mind is as sharp as it was when I was managing million-dollar hospital budgets. Did you authorize your daughter to open credit cards in your name? Absolutely not. I would never authorize anyone to steal my identity. How did you feel when you discovered the full extent of her betrayal? Devastated, furious, but not surprised. My daughter has been lying to me and stealing from me since she was a child. I just never imagined she'd graduate to destroying my entire financial future. The defense's cross-examination was brutal, but completely ineffective. Mrs. Jones, isn't it true that you're doing this for revenge against your daughter? I'm doing this for justice. Not just for me, but for every elderly person who's been victimized by someone they trusted. Even if it means sending your own daughter to prison for years, especially if it means sending my daughter to prison, she needs to learn that stealing from your mother has devastating consequences. The courtroom was absolutely silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air like a verdict. Vanessa's testimony was an absolute disaster that sealed her fate. She cried crocodile tears. She apologized with fake sincerity. she claimed she'd been trying to help me while the evidence of her criminal lifestyle mounted like a mountain of guilt. But under Martinez's ruthless cross-examination, the truth exploded like a bomb. Ms. Washington, you testified that you were helping your mother with her finances. How much of the $137,000 you stole was actually spent on your mother's care? I don't have exact figures. Was any of it spent on your mother's care? Some of it, I think, maybe. You think? You don't know. Let me help refresh your memory. Martinez pulled out a devastating folder of receipts and bank statements. These are credit card statements from the accounts you opened in your mother's name. Can you explain this $3,000 charge at Tiffany & Company? That was for my mother's birthday gift. Your mother's birthday is in March. This charge was in October. Were you planning 6 months ahead? It was an early gift. And this $5,000 charge at a luxury resort in the Bahamas? My mother wanted me to take a vacation. She was worried about my stress levels from taking care of her. Did your mother know you were charging this vacation to her credit card? Not specifically, but she knew I was using the card for necessary expenses. That's not what I asked. Did she know you were charging a $5,000 vacation to her credit card? Yes or no? No, but... And this $8,000 shopping spree at designer boutiques? I needed professional clothes for work. Professional clothes that cost more than most people make in months, charged to your mother's accounts without her knowledge? By the time Martinez was finished with her, Vanessa looked like a broken criminal who'd been caught in every lie she'd ever told. Marcus's testimony was even more catastrophic. He tried to distance himself from the scheme, claiming he'd only been following Vanessa's lead. But Martinez had phone records showing he'd researched my financial information, credit reports proving he'd applied for loans using my identity, and bank records showing he'd deposited checks made out to me into his own accounts. Mr. Peterson, you testified that you weren't involved in managing Mrs. Jones's finances. Can you explain why you were present when she supposedly signed power of attorney documents? I was just there for moral support for Vanessa. Moral support for committing financial fraud against an elderly woman? I didn't know it was fraud. You didn't think it was strange that you were cashing checks made out to someone else? Vanessa said her mother had authorized it. Did you ever speak to Mrs. Jones about these checks? No. Did you ever ask her permission to cash them? No. So you took the word of a woman you knew was stealing from her mother? I didn't see it as stealing. How did you see it? As family helping family. Family helping themselves to an elderly woman's life savings? The jury looked absolutely disgusted with both defendants by the time the defense rested their pathetic case. The jury deliberated for exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. When they returned to that packed courtroom, I could see the determination in their eyes. The foreman stood up with the verdict forms, and the entire courthouse held its breath. On the charge of financial fraud in the first degree against Vanessa Washington, we find the defendant guilty. I felt every muscle in my body relax as justice finally arrived. On the charge of identity theft against Vanessa Washington, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of forgery against Vanessa Washington, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of intimidation of a witness against Vanessa Washington, we find the defendant guilty. The verdicts continued like hammer blows of justice, guilty on every single count for both defendants. Judge Hartley scheduled sentencing for the following month and ordered both defendants to remain in custody pending psychological evaluation. As they led Vanessa away in handcuffs, she looked at me one last time with desperate, pleading eyes. "Mama, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I looked back at her with the cold steel of someone who'd fought for justice and won. "I'm sorry too, Vanessa. Sorry that I raised a daughter who thought stealing from her mother was acceptable." Outside the courthouse, I was surrounded by a sea of reporters, supporters, and elderly people who'd traveled from across the country to witness this moment. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, crying tears of joy and hugging me fiercely. "You did it, Maya. You showed every criminal in America that we don't have to take it anymore." "We did it," I corrected her with fierce pride. This is just the beginning of our war against elder abuse. Jessica was practically glowing with triumph. Maya, this is one of the most complete legal victories I've ever seen in an elder abuse case. The jury awarded you full restitution plus $250,000 in punitive damages. How much total? $387,000 plus interest and legal fees. You're going to be very well compensated for what they put you through. I thought about all the people who'd called me with their stories of financial abuse. Jessica, I want to do something powerful with that money. What do you have in mind? I want to start a foundation that will strike fear into the heart of every person who thinks about abusing an elderly person. The Maya Jones Foundation for Elder Financial Protection. A reporter overheard and thrust a microphone toward me. Mrs. Jones, what would you say to other elderly people who are being financially abused? I looked directly into the camera with fire in my eyes. I'd say that being old doesn't mean being helpless. It doesn't mean being silent. Document everything. Keep meticulous records. Trust your instincts. Don't be afraid to fight back with everything you have. Age is not a weakness. It's wisdom earned through decades of survival. And wisdom can defeat greed every single time. Any final words for your daughter? I hope she learns that actions have devastating consequences. I hope she gets the help she desperately needs. And I hope she understands that love doesn't mean accepting abuse, even from family. The sentencing hearing was held on a frigid Friday morning in January. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity with supporters, media, and victims of financial abuse who'd made this case a symbol of elderly empowerment. Judge Hartley called the court to order with the solemnity of someone delivering historical justice. Before I impose sentence, I'd like to hear from the victim. Mrs. Jones, would you like to make a statement? I stood up and walked to the podium with the dignity of someone who'd fought the fight of her life and won. I'd prepared my statement with surgical precision. Your Honor, 6 months ago, I discovered that my daughter had stolen $137,000 from me over 3 years. But the money wasn't even the worst part of this betrayal. The worst part was being made to feel like I was losing my mind when I questioned discrepancies. The worst part was being treated like I was too old and too stupid to understand my own finances. I looked directly at Vanessa, who was sitting with her head buried in shame. I am 68 years old, Your Honor. I have lived through the civil rights movement and fought for equality. I have buried a beloved husband and raised a daughter as a single mother through sheer determination. I have managed million-dollar hospital budgets and saved countless lives through 4 decades of service. I am not a victim, and I absolutely refuse to be treated like one. The defendants in this case didn't just steal money from me. They stole my peace of mind. They stole my trust in my own judgment. They tried to steal my dignity and my sense of competence. But they failed completely because dignity isn't something that can be taken. It can only be given away, and I refuse to give mine away. I am asking this court to impose a sentence that reflects the devastating seriousness of these crimes, not just the financial crimes, but the crime of elder abuse, the crime of targeting vulnerable people because you think we're easy marks who won't fight back. But we're not easy marks, Your Honor. We're survivors. We're fighters. And we're absolutely not going to be silent anymore. I sat down to thunderous applause from the gallery. Judge Hartley then heard tearful apologies and desperate pleas for leniency from both defendants. Both claimed they were sorry and would never commit such crimes again. Judge Hartley was completely unmoved by their performances. Ms. Washington, you systematically stole from your mother over 3 years. You used your position of trust to forge her signature, open accounts in her name, and take money without her knowledge or consent. When she discovered your crimes, you attempted to gaslight her into believing she was confused or incompetent. This is elder abuse at its most despicable. Mr. Peterson, you were an eager participant in this criminal enterprise. You knew you were cashing checks that didn't belong to you. You knew you were part of a conspiracy to defraud an elderly woman. Elder financial abuse is one of the most contemptible crimes in our society. It targets our most vulnerable citizens and betrays the most fundamental bonds of trust and family. Ms. Washington, I sentence you to 5 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 2.5 years. You are ordered to pay full restitution of $387,000 plus interest and court costs. Mr. Peterson, I sentence you to 3 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 18 months. You are jointly and severally liable for the restitution. Both defendants are permanently banned from having any contact with the victim and from working in any capacity that involves access to elderly people's finances. As they led Vanessa away in shackles, she looked back at me one final time. This time, I saw something different in her eyes, not manipulation or self-pity, but genuine remorse mixed with devastating realization. It was too late to save her, but it was something. 3 months after that satisfying sentencing, I was sitting in a professional office downtown with a gleaming sign on the door, the Maya Jones Foundation for Elder Financial Protection. Jessica had helped navigate the complex legal paperwork to establish our nonprofit organization. Martha had agreed to serve as our chief investigator, and I had committed every penny of my recovered money to funding a revolution against elder abuse. Our first official client was Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, the brave woman who'd inspired me during my own fight. Mrs. Rodriguez, tell me exactly what's been happening with your son. My son Miguel has been intercepting my Social Security checks for 2 years, Maya. He claims he's helping me manage my money, but I never see a penny of it. He pays my basic bills and buys minimal groceries, but he keeps the rest. How much is he stealing every month? About $800, maybe more. When I ask about it, he tells me I'm wrong, that I don't understand how much things cost in today's world. Do you feel confused about your finances? No, I absolutely don't. I feel like someone is lying to me and stealing my future. Then trust that feeling completely. Let me help you destroy him. Within 2 weeks, we had methodically documented that Miguel had stolen over $20,000 from his mother. He was arrested, prosecuted with the full force of the law, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Helen recovered every stolen penny plus interest and damages. Mrs. Jones, if you hadn't come to that senior center and shown us that we don't have to accept abuse, I would never have found the courage to fight back, Helen told me with tears of gratitude. You saved my life. By the end of our first year, the foundation had helped 37 people recover a staggering $1.2 million in stolen funds. We'd gotten 12 criminals prosecuted for financial elder abuse. We'd created a network of volunteer investigators, dedicated lawyers, and passionate advocates. But the most important thing we'd accomplished was showing elderly people across the country that they didn't have to be victims. They could fight back. They could win. A year after the foundation's launch, I was invited to appear on a major national television show to discuss the epidemic of elder financial abuse. Maya Jones, you've become a powerful symbol of elderly empowerment across the country. Tell us how this incredible journey started. It started when I caught my daughter systematically stealing from me and realized I had a choice. Be a victim or be a fighter. I chose to fight, and I discovered that elderly people have more power than anyone realizes. Your daughter was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Do you have any regrets about prosecuting your own child? I have regrets about many things. I regret that I raised a daughter who thought it was acceptable to steal from her mother and manipulate her into questioning her own sanity. I regret that I didn't catch her crimes sooner, but I absolutely don't regret holding her accountable for her actions. Some people say you were too harsh. Some people think elderly people should just accept abuse quietly and be grateful for any attention. I violently disagree with that perspective. Tell us about the foundation and its mission. We help elderly people who are being financially abused by family members, caregivers, or financial predators. We provide legal assistance, investigative services, and emotional support. But most importantly, we show them that they have power and don't have to be victims. What's the most common type of case you encounter? Adult children stealing from their parents while convincing everyone that they're helping with finances. It's heartbreaking and infuriating, but unfortunately very common. Parents love their children unconditionally and trust them completely, and some children ruthlessly exploit that trust. What advice would you give to elderly people who suspect they're being financially abused? Document everything meticulously. Keep detailed records. Don't let anyone convince you that you're confused or incompetent. Trust your instincts completely and get help immediately. There are people who will fight for you with everything they have. And to adult children who might be tempted to take financial advantage of their elderly parents, remember that your parents spent their entire lives sacrificing for you and taking care of you. They deserve infinitely better than being victimized by their own children. And remember that there are people like me watching, people who are ready to fight back and destroy you if you cross that line. After the show, I was contacted by publishers wanting me to write a book, law enforcement agencies wanting me to consult on cases, and conference organizers wanting me to speak. But the most meaningful contacts came from elderly people who'd seen the show and were inspired to fight back against their own abusers. Mrs. Jones, I saw you on television, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. My nephew has been stealing from me, and I was too scared to do anything about it. But after seeing your courage, I called the police. Mrs. Jones, your story gave me the strength to confront my daughter about my missing money. She's agreed to pay back every penny and get counseling. Each call, each letter, each email reminded me why this work was so vital and so personal. 2 years after starting the foundation, I was invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee on aging about the epidemic of elder financial abuse in America. Mrs. Jones, thank you for appearing before us today. Can you tell the committee about the scope and devastating impact of elder financial abuse in this country? Congressman, we are facing a national crisis that's destroying the lives of millions of elderly Americans. The FBI estimates that elderly people lose $3 billion annually to financial scams and abuse. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, just the reported cases. Many victims never report the abuse because they're embarrassed, because they don't know how to fight back, or because the abuser is a trusted family member. What can Congress do to address this epidemic? First, we need massive education campaigns. Elderly people need to know what financial abuse looks like and how to protect themselves. Second, we need much stronger laws with severe penalties and better enforcement. Third, we need substantially more resources for victims. But most importantly, we need to change the narrative from viewing elderly people as helpless victims to recognizing them as powerful advocates for their own rights. Your foundation has been remarkably successful. Can you tell us about your approach? We provide comprehensive support, legal assistance, professional investigative services, emotional counseling, and aggressive advocacy. But the key to our success is showing victims that they have real power, that they can fight back effectively, and that they don't have to accept abuse from anyone. What would you say to elderly people who are watching this hearing right now? I looked directly at the camera with fire and determination in my eyes. I would say that you are absolutely not powerless. You are not too old to fight back with everything you have. You are not too confused to understand what's happening to you, despite what manipulative people might tell you. If someone is stealing from you, manipulating you, or abusing you financially, there are people who will help you and fight for you. But you have to take that crucial first step and refuse to be silent. And what would you say to potential abusers who might be watching? I would say that we're watching you too. We're organized, we're experienced, we're prepared, and we're absolutely not going away. Choose your targets very carefully because you might pick someone like me, and that would be the biggest mistake of your criminal life. The hearing was broadcast live across the nation, and the response was overwhelming and immediate. The Foundation's phone lines were flooded with calls from elderly people seeking help. We received donations from across the country from people inspired by our mission. Most importantly, we were contacted by people who wanted to start similar organizations in their own communities, spreading our message of empowerment and resistance. 3 years after Vanessa's sentencing, I received an unexpected letter forwarded through her parole officer. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, unsure what to expect. Dear Mama, I know I have absolutely no right to contact you, and I know you probably don't want to hear anything from me, but I wanted you to know that I've spent the past 3 years thinking about what I did to you, and I finally understand the devastating magnitude of my betrayal. I didn't just steal money from you, though $137,000 represents years of your hard work and sacrifice. I stole your trust in your own judgment. I stole your peace of mind. I stole your sense of safety in your own home. I tried to steal your dignity and your confidence in your own mental abilities. I used your unconditional love for me as a weapon to destroy you. I have no excuse for what I did. I was selfish, greedy, manipulative, and cruel. I convinced myself that I deserved your money, that you wouldn't miss it, that you were too old to understand modern finances. I was wrong about everything, and my wrongness nearly destroyed both our lives. I've been following news about your foundation, and I'm incredibly proud of what you're doing. You've turned your pain into purpose, your experience into activism, your personal trauma into a force that's helping hundreds of people. You've taken the worst thing that ever happened to you and transformed it into something beautiful and powerful. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want any kind of relationship with me. But I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely sorry and that I'm working every day to become a better person who might someday be worthy of being called your daughter again. When I get out of prison, I'm going to get a legitimate job and start paying back every penny I stole from you. I know it will take many years, maybe decades, but I'm going to do it. It's the absolute least I can do. I love you, Mama. I know I don't deserve your love in return after what I did, but I wanted you to know. Your daughter, if you'll still claim me, Vanessa. I read that letter 3 times, feeling a complex mix of emotions I hadn't expected. Then I put it in my desk drawer and didn't think about it for a month. But eventually, I realized that forgiveness isn't about what someone deserves. It's about what you need to move forward and heal. And perhaps it was time for me to consider the possibility of healing. I wrote back, Vanessa, I received your letter, and I appreciate that your apology seems sincere, but apologies are just words until they're backed up by consistent actions over time. If you truly want to prove that you've changed, you'll need to demonstrate it through your behavior, not your promises. I will never trust you with my finances again. I will never give you access to my personal information. I will never put myself in a position where you can hurt me again. Those bridges are burned forever. But if you're serious about making amends, there are ways you can help. The foundation always needs volunteers who understand financial crimes from the perpetrator's perspective. If you're willing to help other victims by sharing your story honestly, by explaining how these crimes work and how to prevent them, that would be meaningful. I don't know if we can ever have a real relationship again, but I'm willing to see if you can earn back the right to be called my daughter, Maya. Vanessa was released on parole 6 months later. She found a job at a financial counseling center for people with criminal records and started making monthly restitution payments like clockwork. One day, she appeared at the foundation office looking older, thinner, but somehow more substantial than before. Hello, Mama. Vanessa, please, sit down. She sat across from my desk and slid an envelope across with nervous hands. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000 and a detailed payment plan showing exactly how she intended to pay back every stolen penny. I got a job making $35,000 a year. After taxes and minimal living expenses, I can pay you $1,000 every month. According to my calculations, it will take me 11 years to pay back everything I stole, but I'm absolutely committed to doing it. I studied the payment plan carefully. It was detailed, realistic, and conservative. This is very thorough and well-researched. I learned a lot about financial planning and responsibility in prison. Ironic, isn't it? What kind of work are you doing at the counseling center? I help people who've been released from prison understand how to manage their finances legally and ethically. I tell them about the real consequences of financial crimes. Not just the legal penalties, but the personal devastation. I use my own story as a cautionary tale of what not to do. And they actually listen to you? They listen because I've been exactly where they are. I've made the same mistakes they're tempted to make. I can tell them precisely what it costs, not just in prison time, but in destroyed relationships, lost trust, and permanent damage to your soul. Why are you really here, Vanessa? I wanted to ask if I could volunteer for the foundation in some capacity. Doing what? Education and prevention work. I want to talk to adult children who might be tempted to financially abuse their elderly parents. I want to explain what it really costs everyone involved. I looked at her for a long moment, trying to see if this transformation was real or just another manipulation. You understand that if you work with the foundation, you'll be publicly admitting to what you did? You'll be using your own crimes as educational tools? I understand completely. And you're prepared for the judgment, the criticism, the people who will say you're just trying to rehabilitate your public image? I don't care what people say about me anymore. I care about preventing other families from going through the hell we went through. What we went through? You mean what you put us through. You're absolutely right. What I put you through, what I put our family through, what I put myself through by choosing to become a criminal. I stood up and walked to the window, considering her request carefully. Vanessa, I've spent the past 4 years helping people recover from financial abuse. I've seen the devastating damage it causes. I've seen how it destroys trust, traumatizes victims, and tears families apart forever. I know. I've seen the news coverage of your work. Do you? Do you really understand the full scope of what you did to me? I think I'm beginning to understand, and I want to spend the rest of my life making sure other people don't make the same devastating choices I made. I turned back to face her. Then prove it, not with words, but with actions. If you want to work with the foundation, you'll start at the bottom. You'll do whatever needs to be done. You'll follow our rules, our procedures, our standards without question, and you'll do it without pay, because this is about making amends, not making money. I understand and accept those terms, and if you ever betray the trust of anyone connected to this foundation, I will personally make sure you go back to prison for the maximum sentence possible. I understand. Then we'll try it. 3 months, strictly probationary. After that, we'll evaluate your performance and decide if you've earned the right to continue. She stood up with what looked like genuine gratitude. Thank you, Mama. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've proven you've actually changed into someone worthy of trust. Vanessa's first assignment was filing and data entry, putting her in direct contact with every heartbreaking case we handled. Every file she processed was a story of betrayal, manipulation, and financial abuse that mirrored her own crimes. After her first week, she came to my office with a comprehensive proposal that surprised me. I've been reading about financial abuse prevention programs, and I think we could develop something powerful, workshops specifically designed for adult children of elderly parents. Explain your thinking. Most prevention programs focus exclusively on teaching elderly people how to protect themselves. But what if we also taught adult children how to help their parents legitimately without crossing the line into abuse and exploitation? She presented a detailed proposal for Preventing Financial Elder Abuse, a workshop for adult children that was thorough, well-researched, and brutally honest. This is actually very good work, I told her. We can pilot it. The pilot workshop drew 23 attendees ranging in age from 35 to 65. All had elderly parents and were involved in helping them with financial matters to some degree. Vanessa stood at the front of the room and introduced herself with devastating honesty. My name is Vanessa Washington. 4 years ago, I stole $137,000 from my mother over a period of 3 years. I was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison for financial elder abuse. I'm here to tell you exactly how it happened, how I justified it to myself, and why you need to be extremely careful that you don't follow the same destructive path I did. The room was dead silent, shocked by her brutal honesty. I'm going to walk you through the progression of how someone becomes an elder abuser, because it doesn't happen overnight. It starts with legitimate help, gradually escalates to taking more control, progresses to rationalizing unauthorized transactions, and eventually becomes outright theft and manipulation. She described each step of her criminal evolution with surgical precision, explaining the rationalizations and justifications she'd used at every stage. At each step, I told myself I was helping my mother. I told myself she was too old to understand modern finances. I told myself I deserved compensation for my help and sacrifice. I told myself I would pay it back eventually. Every single one of those thoughts was a lie. I told myself to justify stealing from the woman who raised me. During the question and answer session, a middle-aged woman raised her hand nervously. I've been managing my father's accounts for 2 years. Sometimes I use his credit card for my own expenses, but I always pay it back eventually. Is that wrong? Vanessa looked at her with the intensity of someone trying to prevent a tragedy. That's exactly how I started. Small amounts, always with the intention of paying it back, and eventually became never. You're already crossing the line from help to theft. After the workshop, 6 people approached us privately to admit they'd been taking money from their elderly parents without permission. All 6 agreed to stop immediately and seek legitimate financial counseling. This was far more effective than I expected, I told Vanessa afterward, because it was completely honest. I wasn't lecturing them from a position of moral superiority. I was warning them from a position of painful experience and devastating consequences. Are you prepared to do this regularly? To keep reliving your mistakes in public? If it prevents even one family from going through what we went through, yes, I'll do it as many times as necessary. Then let's expand the program nationally. 5 years after starting the foundation, I was invited to the White House to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom for my work in combating elder financial abuse across America. The ceremony was held in the East Room, with representatives from all 50 states and several foreign countries in attendance. I wore my best Navy suit and carried the same leather briefcase that had belonged to my late husband. Maya Jones, the president announced, for her extraordinary courage in fighting back against financial elder abuse and her tireless work to protect vulnerable elderly Americans from exploitation and fraud. As I walked up to receive the medal, I thought about the incredible journey that had brought me here, from a trusting grandmother who'd been victimized by her own daughter to a national advocate for elder rights and empowerment. At the reception afterward, a young woman in her 20s approached me with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Jones, I'm Sarah Martinez. My grandmother called me after attending one of your prevention workshops. She told me she was concerned about my cousin's handling of her finances. Because of what she learned from you, she asked me to help her investigate. We discovered that my cousin had stolen over $30,000 from her accounts. He's been prosecuted and sentenced to prison, and my grandmother got every penny back. How is your grandmother doing now? She's absolutely incredible. She says you taught her that being 85 doesn't mean being helpless or powerless. She's become an advocate herself. She speaks at senior centers about financial abuse prevention and has helped 3 other elderly people prosecute their abusers. Stories like Sarah's had become commonplace. The foundation's work had created a massive ripple effect that extended far beyond our direct services. We had empowered an entire generation of elderly people to stand up for themselves and taught their families to respect their autonomy and dignity. That evening, I returned to my hotel room and found Vanessa waiting for me in the lobby, looking nervous but determined. Congratulations, Mama! I watched the entire ceremony on television, and I've never been more proud of anyone in my life. Thank you. What are you doing here? I wanted to give you something. She handed me a small wrapped package with trembling hands. Inside was a photo of the 2 of us from when she was 7 years old, shortly after her father died. We were sitting on the front porch of our old house, her head resting on my shoulder, both of us smiling with genuine happiness. I found this in my things when I got out of prison. I wanted you to have it back. I looked at the photo for a long moment, remembering that innocent little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Why? Because I want you to remember that there was a time when I was worthy of your love and trust, and because I want you to know that I'm fighting every day to become that person again. Are you? Really? I'm trying with everything I have, every day. The workshops, the restitution payments, the work with other former inmates. It's all part of trying to earn back the right to be called your daughter. I studied her face carefully. 5 years had aged her, but they'd also matured her in ways I hadn't expected. There was a steadiness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Vanessa, I need to tell you something. 3 months ago, I updated my will and estate planning. She stiffened, probably expecting to be written out completely. Mama, I don't expect anything. I left everything to the foundation, every penny, but I also established something called the Vanessa Washington Scholarship for Financial Crime Prevention. She stared at me in shock. I don't understand. It will fund education and training for people who want to work in elder abuse prevention, people who understand the issue from both sides, people who've made mistakes but are committed to preventing others from making the same ones. She started crying, tears streaming down her face. Why would you do that? Because you've proven that people can change if they're truly committed to it, because you've turned your worst mistake into something meaningful and helpful, because you've helped prevent other families from going through what we went through. Does this mean you forgive me? I thought carefully before answering. It means I believe in the person you're becoming. It means I think your father would be proud of the work you're doing now, and it means that when people ask about the Vanessa Washington Scholarship, I'll be able to tell them about a woman who made a terrible, devastating mistake, but spent the rest of her life trying to make it right. It wasn't the same relationship we'd had before. It would never be the same, but it was something new, something honest, something real and hard-earned. Thank you, Mama. Don't thank me. Keep earning it every single day. 10 years after I first discovered those hidden bank statements in my kitchen drawer, I was 78 years old and ready to step back from the foundation's daily operations. I'd built something that would outlast me and continue fighting for elderly people long after I was gone. The numbers told an incredible story. Over the past decade, we'd helped 2,847 elderly people recover more than $47 million in stolen funds. We'd secured 634 convictions for elder abuse across the country. We had active chapters in all 50 states and 12 foreign countries. Our prevention programs had reached over 100,000 elderly people and their families. But the real measure of our success wasn't in the statistics. It was in the transformed lives and the cultural shift we'd created. Mrs. Rodriguez, now 83, traveled the country speaking about elder abuse prevention with the passion of a crusader. Maya taught me that being old doesn't mean being powerless, she told audiences everywhere she went. Mr. Thompson, now 91, had personally helped prosecute 6 caregivers for financial abuse and recovered over $200,000 for elderly victims. I learned from Maya that trust has to be earned through actions, not assumed because of relationships, he said. Mrs. Kowalski, now 79, had started her own foundation specifically to help elderly immigrants who were being exploited by family members. Maya showed me that one person with courage and determination can make a difference in thousands of lives, she explained. Vanessa, now 52, had become the foundation's director of perpetrator education programs. She'd spoken to over 10,000 people about the real cost of financial elder abuse, not just the legal consequences, but the devastating personal ones. My mother could have chosen revenge, she told audiences across the country. Instead, she chose justice. She could have chosen bitterness and hatred. Instead, she chose advocacy and education. She could have chosen to see me as irredeemable. Instead, she chose to see me as capable of change and growth. The foundation would continue under new leadership with fresh energy and innovative approaches. The scholarship fund would ensure that people who understood both sides of financial abuse, victims and perpetrators, would always be part of the fight against elder exploitation. But my active work was done. I'd built something lasting and powerful. Today, as I write the final report for the Maya Jones Foundation, I want to speak directly to every person reading this who might be experiencing financial abuse, who loves someone who is being victimized, or who might be tempted to exploit an elderly person. You are not powerless. You are not too old to fight back with everything you have. You are not confused just because manipulative people tell you that you are. You have wisdom earned through decades of experience, and that wisdom is your greatest weapon. If someone is stealing from you, manipulating you, or taking advantage of your trust, there are people who will help you. There are people who will fight for you. There are people who will stand with you until justice is served. Document everything meticulously. Keep detailed records. Trust your instincts completely. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too old to understand your own finances or make your own decisions. Remember that real love doesn't include theft, manipulation, or abuse of any kind. To the adult children, caregivers, and financial advisors who work with elderly people, remember that trust is a sacred privilege, not an automatic right. Remember that helping someone doesn't mean controlling them or taking advantage of them. Remember that elderly people deserve the same respect, autonomy, and dignity as anyone else. And to anyone who might be tempted to take advantage of an elderly person, remember that we're watching you, we're organized, we're experienced, we're prepared, and we're absolutely not going away. Some of us have been fighting for our rights since before you were born. We know how to organize effective resistance. We know how to investigate crimes. We know how to prosecute criminals. And we know how to win decisive victories. We've survived the Great Depression, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, and countless other challenges that would break weaker people. We're not about to be defeated by thieves, con artists, and manipulators. Age is not weakness. It's wisdom earned through decades of survival and struggle, and wisdom, combined with determination and the right allies, can overcome anything. Don't test us. Don't underestimate us. Don't think we'll be silent. My daughter called me a toxic old B-word the day she was sentenced to prison for stealing my future. She thought I was just another confused old woman she could rob blind and discard. She was wrong, dead wrong. And if you're thinking about targeting an elderly person for exploitation, you're wrong too. We're Maya Jones. We don't play games. We don't back down. We fight back with everything we have. We win decisively. And we're everywhere, watching and waiting. If this story has inspired you to take action, whether to protect yourself, to help others, or to support organizations fighting elder abuse, then please share it with everyone you know. Like this story, subscribe to channels that promote elder empowerment, support organizations that fight financial abuse with passion and determination. Most importantly, respect the elderly people in your life. Listen to them with genuine attention. Value their hard-earned experience. Protect their dignity fiercely, because someday, if you're fortunate enough, you'll be elderly too, and you'll want someone to fight for you the way I learned to fight for myself and others. Remember, Maya Jones doesn't play games. Maya Jones doesn't accept abuse. Maya Jones fights back and wins, and neither should you. Age is wisdom. Wisdom is power. Use it to protect yourself and others.